the number 2 podcast in the galaxy. Welcome to Stream Our Consciousness.
Welcome.
SOC Pod.
At SOC Pod. It's nice to see you all. It's nice to I'm glad you can hear us now. Hello. I don't know. Hello. It's been so long. Welcome to our second episode of season 2. As we like to title this episode, The Elements. And we're going to do some elemental philosophy, some relations to the elements and kind of how they affect us. And so, the elements, I don't know if any of you guys are a big Avatar fan, but water, earth, fire, air, long ago, the 4 nations lived together in harmony until, well, you get the gist. So we're here to discuss the 4 elements of this earth and how they relate to you. Yes, you. I'm here to start with the origins of the universe. So we began with the Big Bang. And from there on, our entire environment around us that we see today and that has continued to develop all derives from one giant galactic event. So if everything around us comes from that one starting point, that we need to realize, like, we're all kind of made up of the same matter. So in physics, and we know that matter cannot be created nor destroyed. So essentially our earthly bodies and composition and experiences and everything around us is just all recycled forms of matter. And that's where the saying, we all are stardust, comes from. Knowing that we are all connected from this one giant event and ensures us that all of our matter, like, we're all made of the same stuff, essentially, in the most simplest terms. And if we are all made up of the same stuff, then we all need to realize, like, oh, we are very connected to the elements and the fundamentals of them, more than we like to believe. And also in other theories, when it comes to God, in the creation of God, like, if you read in the book of Genesis, like, he picks up soil from the earth, and from there he creates mankind. So in all of the theories of creation, we discuss, like, the elements being put together to make things, you know what I mean? And that from there it recycles and recycles. So in spirituality and science and in philosophical theories, like, the origins of humankind all derive from being made up of the matters around us. But this is kind of where, talking about elements, like, humans have unfortunately become so egocentric where, we believe the world revolves around us. And therefore, we don't really pay attention to the things as, like, the natural elements, what we're made up of, et cetera, like, going past biology, kind of going more on the chemistry sense. But it's just an example of, like, we don't understand the exacerbation of climate change and, like, the immense impacts on the place we need to survive. And, stepping away from that mindset to be like, oh, wait, the world does not revolve around humans. It revolves around, like, it's Earth, and, like, we're all part of it. So if we're all part of it, like, we're all made up of the same stuff, like, we start seeing this, like, as this is a giant orchestration of, like, physics and chemistry and matter. And so when you become aware of this relationship between literal, like, chemistry and, like, your body and your mind and your soul and your experiences and the physical, tangible matter around you, you notice how connected our bodies are to the environment.
And it was talking about all the elements, correct? A little introduction of physics and the world. Now, I look at these elements as ingredients of this earth, but then that's more macro sense. So let's go into more micro sense. These are ingredients of our human bodies. Yeah, maybe in biology, they're not like this, they don't talk about this stuff in biology because this is more spirituality. And this is when we're combining astronomy and spirituality, and this is what astrology is. So we're not the first people to talk about these things. They've been talking about this ever since pre-Socratics. Anna gave us a little Big Bang theory, and now I'm talking about these people that recognized there was a Big Bang theory in BC, before Christ. And they're like, what is going on in the heavens? I like this quote from Thales. Not from Thales, someone who observed Thales, because Thales always be talking about the stars.
Yeah.
So they were, because back then, you know, they didn't have notes on your iPhone. They have like papyrus and like, I don't
They
know.
thought did they think the world was flat?
Yeah. Well, so yeah, that's more like Western thought. This is like,
Oh, true. This is
this is
good
when they
point.
were, so they didn't even like, this is when they were talking about what is the world made up of? Did it start from water? Did it start from air? Did it start from fire? Did it start from dirt? So obviously the Genesis said it started from dirt, right? That's what you were saying.
Yeah, like he made all of the elements throughout a span of time. Like they all derived from the thing that he was making. They derived from nothing. You know what I mean? Like his being, or like the Big Bang, like it just derived from nothing. It just started.
Yeah, so it just derived from nothing. Everyone's like aware of that, but then it's like he grabbed that piece of dirt. Obviously, if you interpret that, you can think, oh, it started from dirt. So that's soil. That's earth. But then there was these other philosophers. I think this was even before, because this is before Christ. So I think this is before that the Genesis was even made, right?
Maybe. That's a really good biblical timeline.
Yeah. So these pre-Socratics were like, Thales was like, the world is made out of water.
Yeah.
The world was made out of water. And people would say about him always talking about this stuff. Thales being eager to know things in the heavens, but failing to notice what was just behind him and right by his feet. So this is where the philosophers were going deep into the astronomy. But maybe Thales forgot to recognize how it's going to affect him internally. And that's what everyone saw around him. You're going so hard with these bigger universal truths and ideas, but look at your own life and see how you could bring those universal truths and ideas and help you with your personality.
Exactly.
So that's why we're taking all these big ideas and we're saying, this is what the elements look like when they're bound to a body. And everyone has a different configuration of these elements. So our main question is, what is X element? So whatever elements that you're looking at, which we have 4 to choose from: air, fire, water, and earth. What does that look like in characteristics, moods, body language, and speech?
Yeah. We're talking about these elements, right? So we're all made up of stuff, but this is kind of where we come in with astrology. We're all made up of stuff, and astronomy can help determine what kind of signals around the world were placed in this particular moment of time that influence directly all of these elements that you're made up of. So that's where this comes to astrology. This comes to like something, it's like the spiritual thing of being connected to the planets, to matter, to the elements, and how important they are, as you said, to understand your personality and understand how you work, how you interact in all the different ways to kind of compartmentalize and as well as understand how they work, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like a really good form of introspection. So I think that's kind of like when you have this outer spection. Is that a word? Outer spection.
We made it. Universe. Is that the word of the weekend? Did you just make a word of the week?
Outer spection. I think that might be. I don't think that's a word, but
okay,
please.
Perfect.
So outer spection. You know, you have the outer spection of the universe, the world, as we started, and now it comes all within. Why? Because like we're all made up the same stuff. Like it's like something that I think me and Gabby both really believe, that every human is like their own little universe. You know what I mean? Like that's like, again, my favorite quote, like we're all stardust. Like we're all this like cosmic connected beings in some way. And to deny that is to deny all of the physics elements, chemistry that make up everything around us, that also make up ourselves. So that's kind of where we're coming from. So this episode works for you if you have an understanding of your birth chart. If you have an understanding of like, all you need is like the place you were born, the time you were born, and the birth date, and keep it as
you can't get a track down to the time, it's okay, you could still do this to an extent. If it's impossible
Exactly.
to get the time, you're not left out of the universe. Don't worry.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like so this is just like again a big form of like Western astrology. Like we are mostly talking in the context of Western astrology, because that's kind of what we're learning from. I know there's a lot of different interpretations of this across the world. So, like if you're listening in, like this is about your just like again the time you were born, the location, and the place. So you put those things together, and you can kind of get a sense of like oh, we're all like the zodiac, like not only are you, it's in Western astrology or at least mainstream astrology, it's all about like, oh, your sun, like, oh, I'm a sun Scorpio, I'm a sun Gemini. So it's much more than that. Like you're made up of all of the signs in a bunch of different ways and in different placements. So it's about you looking at yourself as like a big picture, as like, oh, I'm the sun, moons, like like all the planets and how you relate to them and the signs. Then that will constitute your elements. And your elements are important for you to understand because they all have their very individualistic quality. Like Gabby and I have briefly spoke on like psychology and astrology being put together. Like this is something me and my friend talked about this weekend. We were talking about astrology. We were talking about Carl Jung. Jung, like Carl Jung or Carl Jung, Carl Jung.
Whatever
Yeah,
you
Jung.
want.
So Carl Jung. Yeah, so we were talking about Carl Jung and how he used the psychology. He was a psychologist, and a psychologist that used astrology to explain the elements and explain how they might have similar patterns based on the impacts of all of the moons around us. You know, I think more days as like we're moving, our society's moving to an extremely spiritual place. I think that's why people are intrigued to listen to this, because we're not a society that this is kind of a little off track, but like we're not really a society that's religious, you know, and we believe in more of a secularism. Um, so, but we're turning a lot to spirituality. We're turning a lot to understanding, like finding, at least it's like, again, all these beliefs are for us to validate and feel comfort in. You know what I mean? Like people don't believe in things that like really like don't vibe with them or their true sense of being like they do, like making like that's the point of us is like finding your own philosophy. Society is moving from to be more spiritual, like spiritual in its own secular way, not a practicing religion or these things of rules or whatever. It's more of an understanding and forming those connections. That's kind of what I wanted to briefly touch on. So this is going to work for you if you have your birth chart. If you have your resources, like you can look at like AstroSeek, you can look at Astro Charts, you can I just recently downloaded this amazing app called The Pattern, hashtag not sponsored, but it's a great fucking app. So it's being able to look at this stuff and be like, oh, cool, I can get an introspection. But this is for people who actually want to get the introspection because they want to do it for themselves. This isn't like this will be the people that take their time to do that. So once you have this information laid out in front of you, you take in consideration all of the signs, all of the elements, how are more prevalent than others. And regardless, you will be a mix of elements, you know? So like it's knowing that you're everything, but also like kind of pinpointing where your strengths, where your weaknesses come, and like how each one carries these mix of elements and how they will be expressed in your life, how they will be developed, exerted, different aspects of your life.
Exactly. All these signs interact within each other within your body. Okay. Everyone has a different configuration. So, yes, you may know someone that has the same sun sign or the same Mercury or same Venus, but they might not act the same as you because the way their other signs interact with that sign. So, that's why it's really important to be introspective and look at your birth chart. So, we are going to give you a little outline of what these signs are if you're not familiar, but now we're going to go a little deeper into the categories they fall under.
So, fixed, cardinal, mutable. Um, there are four. Okay, so there's 12 signs in the zodiac. Four of those signs are fixed signs. Four of those signs are cardinal signs, and four of those signs are mutable signs. So fixed, cardinal, mutable, they all operate differently. One of the first important distinction is if you're a fixed sign versus a cardinal sign versus a mutable sign.
And you have one of every element in each of these distinctions.
Exactly. So
So
yeah. So now we can discuss like what the actual signs of the elements are and take and insert the key differences being whether they're fixed, cardinal, or mutable.
So let's give a little. You want to give a little overview on what me and Anna came up to with terms that kind of explain. If you don't know, because for example, I didn't know deeply what fixed, cardinal, and mutable means, and this is a new topic for me. So we thought of with after our research, we thought of just one word to explain fixed, cardinal, and mutable. One word to explain each of those words.
All right. So
Okay, guys.
there are 12 signs. There are 12 signs in the zodiac, right? So 4 of those signs are fixed, 4 of those signs are cardinal, 4 of those signs are mutable. And also in those 12 signs, we have 4 different elements. We have water, earth, fire, and air. So in those 4 elements, there are 3 signs. So, and those 3 signs will vary in whether they are fixed, cardinal, and mutable. That is the easiest explanation I can give you. So, we're going to go through this as in we're going to give you a rundown what is fixed, what is cardinal, and what is mutable. Like what kind of those things represent, because those are going to be one of the main indicators in the way your overall element is exerted out. So, yeah, let's give you a little overview. Like fixed and mixed. Fixed signs are very methodical. They kind of know how they work. They're kind of in their own ways. Like they're very much, they have a methodology to how they work and they stick to it. And that's kind of how they are. They're fixed. You know what I mean? There's not much room
They like
for
staying comfortable. That's the thing.
Exactly. So, and then we have cardinal signs. And so cardinal signs, like they kind of have this little like flame in them and they're ignited and they're ignited is the best way to like, they're kind of like a little fuse. Like they're very, I don't know, passionate is kind of the best way. Like Gabby kind of said, they're very like initiative. So those are kind of cardinal signs.
These are all signs that start off the seasons. So like so
That's a good point.
that's where I got the initiation from.
So then we have the mutable signs. And the mutable signs, I have a lot of mutable signs in my birth chart. They're very, very versatile people. They're extremely adaptable people. And yeah, they're just like very like just if you can think of anything that's like ever changing, it's like what a mutable sign is. Like they're constantly changing, thinking, feeling, moving. And yeah. So now that's kind of what it is. So we have fixed as methodical, cardinal we thought of as passionate, and mutable we see as versatile and adaptable.
It's hard for you guys to remember how those relate, those words. So I watched a bunch of YouTube videos to connect this, but basically fixed signs, that's like in the middle of a season. So when you're in the middle of a season, it's gonna be really cold, really hot. It's like the temperature is fixed and it's not changing. But with the cardinal signs, this is like the beginning of a season, the freshness of fall, the freshness of summer, the freshness of all those seasons. And if you go to the mutable signs, this is the transformation at the end of a season where you're like, okay, I'm ready to change. I'm ready to let go of the last season.
Change.
So,
yeah.
So if you want to, so it actually does connect with the actual seasons.
Very good point. So now we're going to go into, all right, so we went into fixed, cardinal, mutable. Now we're going to go into the actual elements, which are water signs, earth signs, and fire signs, and air signs, and kind of how we feel them out, how we kind of see how they operate, kind of their biggest strengths, and kind of how they serve out into like how their elements kind of overall are.
So Anne and I can start off as water signs because we both are water signs. So
sun sign, water signs, yeah.
So but then you have to realize there's a different level of water signs. So we have keywords to kind of group in what water signs mean. So we say that it's sympathetic, sensitive, and emotionally depth and psychic.
The 3 water signs are the fixed sign of Scorpio, so the methodical Scorpio. We have like the cardinal Cancer, we have the mutable Pisces. And yeah, these are all water signs, but as we mentioned, like they're different, fixed, cardinal, mutable. So they're gonna release all of this sympathy, all of this sensitivity, all of this emotional depth and kind of psyche that they have in kind of different ways. And so that's kind of their vibe. And they're just the emotion of the ocean because they're water signs. That's kind of the best way to put it.
Exactly. And the way that Anna lets out her emotions are not the same that I let her out her emotions, even though we both have these characteristics where we both agree with. We're both like, okay, we're both sympathetic, sensitive, and emotional depth, but the levels to all of these words are very different.
Yeah, and they're carried out differently too. And again, it's not just like that's just basis off our sun sign. Like it goes deeper into your overall birth chart, like how different placements and different things are in different signs and in different fixed. Oh, yeah, this gets crazy complicated. So this is for people who really want like a good introspection, and it's a really good form of like just kind of personal work to kind of see if you relate to this stuff, see if you kind of fit and how you don't fit and how it's different from fitting from the average. But we're all made up of our own individual birth charts, kind of how we are fingerprints, like we're all our own little fingerprints in the cosmos. So now we're going to go into earth signs.
So the fixed sign that is Earth is Taurus, which goes well with Scorpio. And then we have the cardinal that is Capricorn. And we have the mutable, which is Virgo. So as you see here, the cardinal sign that's like water, Cancer, goes well with the cardinal Capricorn. The mutable sign, Pisces, goes well with the mutable Virgo, with the earth signs. So they understand, even though they're different elements, we have to start making parallels between
exactly.
these.
There's such thing in like astrology and like elements is like kind of forms of synergy. For an example, the water and earth signs are very compatible together. So then therefore they create this form of synergy. And so they're opposing like the cardinal and the cardinal. They're actually kind of like opposites of each other, but they're in the same kind of cardinal space, even though they're different elements. They match super well in a way that is kind of complementary to each other. So it's a huge indication of like how things work and how they're operating in the kind of the same way in the passionate manner. So that's why we said cardinal Cancer and cardinal Capricorn. We have like fixed Scorpio, fixed Taurus, like mutable Pisces, mutable Virgo. They're kind of there's this synergy going on and these parallels. So those are the two kind of the most compatible, you know, the fit, the water and the earth signs. Like they're very much, they fit kind of where each other needs. And like a big keyword of like what an earth sign is, like they're super grounded people. They're super fucking chill. Like earth signs are so chill. And like, you know, that chillness comes from like kind of a very like in tuneness with their body. You know what I mean? I feel like Taurus, like not Tauruses, that was just an example, but just like earth signs are very like, I don't know, since they're very grounded, so they kind of have their own, they know kind of the rhythm that they beat to, and like they're kind of like in their body in that way. It's very interesting. Like it's kind of what I've always noticed from research, personal research, and like yeah, but not only are they grounded and rhythmic, but they're also very like, yeah, they can be very, very stubborn, you know, and like I think the stubbornness comes out a little more with a fixed sign who is like methodical and pretty rigid, like a Taurus, versus like the stubbornness that comes with a Virgo. It's kind of different, you know. Virgos are very like, you know, these people are very like, they're super in tune with, they're super in tune with everyday stuff. You know what I mean? They're like super in tune, like super in tune with like sleeping, waking, like eating. Like they're so in tune with their body. Not necessarily to say that they're like fitness people, but they're very in tune in some way with their bodies and how they kind of move, and they just like know what works, and they're very aware of the materialistic every single day things. Like they're very, that's why their way of acting out is very just, it's really well thought out. It's very planned, it's very grounded, it's very, you know, it's thought out. It's like they work really fucking hard. Like they're just, you know what I mean? So they have that kind of thing. So it's kind of the overall earth signs, and they work really well with water signs who have like sympathy and sensitivity and that depth. And it's like the ocean meeting the earth, like that, that kind of, how the moon and the waves and the tides, like how that really affects the earth. So I think that it just like matches really well. And water signs, like overall, like I don't think we mentioned this before, like they're super creative people, and they're super like emotional, and like they have a really big depth to them. So they work really well. That depth is really well grounded with the earth signs, the people who are very well aware of like their placement on the earth, while the other guys are in the ocean, they're on the earth. So it's just like a really
Exactly.
good complementary. There's synergy going on, there's whatnot. So that's kind of this thing that's going on with earth and water signs. Again, all of these signs interact very differently with each other and are compatible in all these different ways. But those are like earth and water signs are just very well put together. And so, just how earth and water signs are very put together, so are fire and air signs, So, like, those elements work really well together. So now we're going to go into fire signs. Gabby, take it away.
So we have the fixed sign that's a Leo that is going to go well with the Scorpio and Taurus, the cardinal sign, which is an Aries, that we said pairs well with the Cancer and Capricorn, and then we have this mutable sign with a Sagittarius that pairs well with the Virgo and Pisces. Now, what does this look like? What does this fire sign look like on a human? You could see that these fire signs might be ego driven, and when they take their emotions into account, they think their emotions outweigh other people's emotions at times. And I have all these signs. Oh, I don't have Leo within me, but I have Aries and Sagittarius within me. So um it's not something that they're trying to do. It's not something that these fire signs try to do right away, but it's just a consequence of their actions. So if the fire signs are aware of this, then they could take that into account and kind of change the way that they react to other people's emotions and react to their own emotions. They can also be very impulsive, because fire, you feel it's so fire that why would you keep it in? Why are you going to keep a fire inside you? It's like a
Yeah.
furnace. It's like they want to let it out. They think that someone wants to hear them. They always think that someone wants to hear them talk for some reason. When it's like, I realize, I'm like, all these stupid ass, I have Aries and Sagittarius in my moon and Mercury. I really think, like, I realize that I process my thoughts out loud. There's something with
Yeah.
this cognition that it doesn't stay in my cognition, but it goes straight to my mouth.
Oh, yeah.
That's what the impulsive. It's like ego driven, and it's like when you have this impulsivity, and then you have that first ego driven reflection, then you say that out loud because you're so like physical and energetic that you're there, and then you say this to the person. It's actually intimidating for other people. Because you don't
Yeah.
realize you're just expressing yourself. They think you're coming at them, and you're like, no, just like, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
it's funny because, like, Anna, you have one Sagittarius placement.
No, like my Sagittarius placement is in one of the strongest placements to
Yeah.
have them. There, it's my I'm a rising Sag, so I will sometimes just drop in, say something, and just like leave. It's part of the mutable energy. It's just like
Oh.
there's just the constant like thinking, saying what you feel. Like as I mentioned to Gabby, like I'm a Pisces. Like I have a lot. Like I have a lot of Pisces placements. Like I'm very sympathetic and sensitive and emotional depth. But like the fire in me, the Sagittarius rising brings out like this kind of like, that's something about fire signs. They have this confidence, you know what I mean? And it's
Mhm.
confidence in like, hey, I feel what I feel. Let me show you. You know what I mean? And like, what do you think of that? What are you thinking? What are you doing? They're very demonstrative people. They're very out there. They're very exciting. And you feel them when they're in the room. You notice them and they need to be
Yeah.
noticed. Cause if they're not noticed, like they're like, wait, what? Like, everyone doesn't want to listen to me? And it's like, no, people don't want to listen to you. But they also do, because they bring forth a lot of like charisma and like creativity, and like that's something I love about my Sagittarius rising, is that like my whole being is driven by this fire sign. And so like that's something about your ascendant. If you're on your birth chart, your ascendant is one of the most important places you could ever look at. It's literally what dignifies everything else that comes forward in terms of like planets and houses. Like your rising sign is like what you hone into, because it is like how you take on the world and how you are acting, how you are exerting in the front places. So, like that's kind of where I get really, I get really passionate, as we described, about like fire signs. They're very passionate people because they got emotions, you know what I mean? And they're fiery and like, I kind of, how did you explain it? Like, no, that's just like they're really hot signs because they're fire. It's just like, it's kind of what it is.
And as you guys can see, I kind of feel the most passionate about this as this one. Like it kind of came more natural to talk about this one, because this is what I'm most in touch with. It's like my emotions in my mind. So, and I realized that like Anna, I see Anna's Sagittarius rising so heavily in your Twitter ego, and that's when you let it all out. Because that's your platform. It's like no one's gonna tell you that.
Don't expose me.
I'm not gonna say your shit, but I'm just saying like that's where I see Anna's like feistiness coming out, and it's like it doesn't happen. We have a conversation, like she lets that all in, and then like she knows when to come at me, but like at the same time with Aries, like I'm like, if I'm feeling this right now, you should know that I'm coming at you because I feel this about this.
It's just like different. So that's like an example. So we had like fixed Leo, cardinal Aries, mutable Sagittarius. Like, like the way like a cardinal Aries, like Gaby, her moon is an Aries. So like cardinal, like it needs to be let out immediately, passion, impulse now. Sagittarius is very mutable. So it's like, oh, I have all this energy and feelings and impulsivity, but that changes so quickly. You know what I mean? So like in 1 minute I'm feeling this, and 1 minute I'm feeling that. You know what I mean? It's just like constantly ever changing based on the different information I'm getting. So that's why sometimes like Gaby and I kind of collide, because it's like, it's kind of like how we collide in terms of like, I just like, Gaby, I can't tell you what the end product is, because I'm gonna change my mind 1,000 different ways, because I'm gaining all this different knowledge and I'm thinking all these different things, and that comes a lot of my mutable Sagittarius and my Pisces. I'm just so mutable. My Mercury's in Pisces. Like my sun is in Pisces. Like expressing my ideas, I'm like, how do I tell you something when it's gonna change 1,000 fucking times before it actually?
You gotta understand that my Sagittarius is mutable, and that's my mind, and then the way I like interpret information, I'm very open. So it's like,
you have that double.
Tell me this, I could change with you, but the problem is I get to know at the end, and then I'm like, oh shit, I couldn't even help you the whole time. You know what I mean? It's like I just want to be involved because I want to help.
So
because maybe that's the Aries vibe too, always thinking that their influence is valued, and I don't know.
They're very So like, see, it's just like, this is an example. Like, see how we're both like immediately like, we're water signs, but like water sun signs. So like we're immediately like fire. Like that's what we are. Like we resonate with that so differently, because we have honed in like in that kind of elemental power. You know what I mean? I think that's a huge thing about astrology, is like understanding your power. And so like how you if you understand, like if you were an avatar and you had these capabilities to like manipulate elements, why wouldn't you do that? You know what I mean? Why wouldn't you hone into these powers that every individual human has by being connected to those things? And that's getting a little fucking crazy, but that's kind of what, if you've seen that meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where Charlie is just like with all of the pinpoints, like just like, oh my god, like I fucking made it connect. So that's kind of what it is, so that is what a fire sign is. So fire signs have a very good synergy and a very good connection and like opposing thing to air signs, and I'm very, very passionate about air signs. So we have in air signs, we have the fixed Aquarius, the cardinal Libra, and the mutable Gemini. So air signs, like my moon as an air sign, and like my Mars is an air sign, and I have an air sign stellium, and I have I'm ruled by Uranus. my fucking planet ruler is Uranus. So I have like air sign for me is like such a big, and just like, I don't know, it's like my place, because it's just it's a really, I am like a stellium in Aquarius, if that means anything to anyone, but it's such a big thing I've learned and like really valued, because like it's just an exacerbated form of like Aquarius. So air signs, like Gabby also has like, and she's an Aquarius rising, so like this is what her whole being is driven, is like air signs. So like air signs are very, they're very cerebral people. They need to have like a lot of stimulation, um to like, I don't know, they just need a lot of stimulation, a lot of cerebral stimulation. They're very like pensive thinkers, but the way they think is super different depending on whether they're fixed, cardinal, and like mutable. So they're very logical too. Like the logic behind like an air sign is kind of like subconscious, you know what I mean? Like the subconscious work, like logic that they're going through in their mind is like, it's not like they're actively like thinking of every step by step, even though we are, and we can be very in tune when we are exacerbating that step by step process. Like it's also in a form of very like methodical, like Aquarius is super methodical. Like I'm super methodical in my emotions because my moon is in Aquarius. So like and the cardinal Libra is like, it just like exerts, you know what I mean? It's very impulsive. It's like ego, it's like me, it's like, Libra, it's just like balance, listening to people. Like it's very, it's really, really works well with the Aries. It's kind of the opposite of Aries. Like Aries is this whole kind of like explosion of like, it's the birth of the zodiacs. It's like this explosion of energy, and Libra's like the cardinal, the opposite synergy, being like, oh, it's much more balanced, but it understands that Aries like impulsion because it's cardinal. It understands that, but it just knows how to balance it a little better because it's more logical. It's not ego driven. And then we have one of my favorite signs, immutable Gemini, and that's just like, they're very, I don't know, they're very like just talkative, inquisitive people. Like air signs are so inquisitive. They love talking to people. Like I love air signs so much. So yeah, they also can be very, very detached. They can be really detached from situations and like view things again in a subconscious level logic
I
that
feel
no
like
other.
they love talking about talking to people, but hate talking to people at the same time. So I don't know, something about the air
Mutable.
signs that I know that they're just like really smart and they know how to talk the talk and they know how to communicate, where it's like, if you know an air sign that doesn't want to communicate with you, that means I feel like they do not fuck with you.
Yeah, also like they like sometimes, yeah, they just don't fuck with you at all. Yeah, they really don't. And
Yeah, they just don't like people that are like incompetent to their level. I don't know. I know some Geminis that are not mutable, that are mutable, but they just like don't. They're just like not open to transforming themselves. They act like they are, but they're not themselves when they're communicating with the person that they don't want to communicate with.
yeah, because I think I think like like low key, like I think of air signs, like they're really hard, like they're really unpredictable people,
Yeah.
really unpredictable. And they're really like, I don't know, that you just like, like like one of our favorite like astrologers, like OGC astrology, she was like, water, when you feel water, you feel like you feel the like a huge weight of an ocean, you know what I mean? When you have earth, you feel like this really like, when you put your feet on the ground, like your bare
Yeah,
feet in
someone
the
like
grass, like you
pinning you
feel
down.
that, like you
Yeah.
feel like the grounding, kind of like a weighted blanket. And then with fire, you feel like, whoa, like I feel the heat, I feel that heat. But with air signs, you just feel unpredictability. That's like what it is. It's not like this, you don't
Yeah.
know, you literally don't know. And like that's like
That's what
something
I don't like. So that's why
yeah, you
Anna's
don't
like
know.
loving that little mystery and loves that stuff. But someone, I don't know, something about the unpredictability with, I don't know what placement, I've yet to figure out what air sign placement I don't fuck with, but um I want someone, if they feel something, they got to tell me. I'm not trying to go hard and ask the right questions for them to figure out what they're feeling, because the thing is, they play a game I never signed up for, or I never read the
Yeah.
directions to.
Yep.
I never read the directions, so how am I supposed to play this game with you? That's why
Yeah.
I get so confused. Like
Yeah.
I get really confused. So
But
I
yeah,
don't like that.
this is the thing, is like that game that you think they're playing, it's so subconscious. Like they don't know, you know what I mean? They don't think they're playing any game. They think they're just thinking. You know what I mean? They're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we're just thinking, we're just doing." They're so, that's what they are. It's like, yes, this is a full on fucking mind game they're playing. Like, but it's just so on the subconscious. It's just so deeply rooted in that elements, like subconscious, like the air, like it just comes and goes, it flows, it's hot and cold. Like it is, air is just like, you can't grasp it. You don't know when the breeze is coming, when it's not. Like from
It's
all
always
directions.
moving.
It is always moving, but like, you know what I mean? And so their thought process is always moving. They're always thinking and they're always playing these games subconsciously in their mind. And it's just coming from being like a very cerebral, logical, like unpredictable, detached thing. They're air. Like they're not attached to anything. So they can think anything and whatever. And like, yeah, the fixed sign like an Aquarius will be really methodical when it comes to how they think, and they won't really want to change that. But they still are constantly changing in the terms of like when they find new information or they find something like that. So they're super inquisitive people. They like to talk about it. And so I think that's I love that about air sign. It's just like you just get that like stimulation. You know what I mean? A stimulation that's just unpredictable, and it's so fun to roll with. You know what I mean? Like I think that's what air signs need. They just need someone to roll with. And they're like, oh, these fire signs, these just driven people that are just like impulsive. They're like, oh shit, I'm gonna roll with it. You know what I mean? And like air signs, I mean, like fire signs, just like, you know what I mean? Like fire needs air to survive. Yeah. So you know what I mean? So it's just like they have that synergy where it's like, whoa, this person is acting the way they're doing. And like, I just feel what I feel. And I feel like fire signs, they it's not like they're perfectly compatible, but I feel like they appreciate the other's forms of being. Same goes how earth signs appreciate water signs. Fire signs really appreciate air signs. But again, those are not just the only two pairings we're just going to pull off, like air signs and fire signs, water signs and earth signs. Yeah, it's going to make a big difference. You're going to notice it. If you look at patterns in your relationships, you're going to notice those complements. You know what I mean? But we both like all of the signs are really mixed. You know what I mean? So you like as a water sign, I've dated fire signs. You know what I mean? Like as like people with like earth signs have dated air signs. So it's like has nothing to do with like or dated have relationships with for like family. Like all of that is so mixed up. But that's kind of how they operate. You know what I mean? They operate, and again, these are overall just kind of keywords. They're not really, every person is so different at the end of the day. And that's going to be, you know, for your individual kind of discernment, how you're going to take this and how you're going to see where it applies or doesn't apply in your life. That's the important part. And kind of knowing like, oh, I'm fixed, I'm cardinal, I'm mutable. Like those keywords kind of help you harness the element that you're made out of. Gaby and I are both water signs. I have heavy water placements in my chart. So it's just like water signs are so fucking, as I mentioned, like the emotion of the fucking ocean, you know? So it's just a lot of emotion. With that emotion, you kind of develop this insane psyche where you like really know how people feel. You're like the empathy is like through the fucking roof. You know, it's just a form of empathy and like love. It's a really soulful love, you know? It's just like a very like, oh my God, like I just have these emotions that are so deep for everything around me. You know what I mean? Like that's one of my favorite, like, but that's why like it's so stereotypical, but it's so true. Like water signs cry so much, like, cause it's like, we feel it all, you know what I mean? And that's kind of the hard thing. It's like, we don't know half the shit we fucking feel, but we feel it, and we feel it so heavy. And like it's just this ocean of emotion, and it runs so deep. And like, it's exerted differently, you know. And a fixed Scorpio is like kind of its own thing. Its cardinal Cancer is different, is like a passionate emotion, you know. Fixed is a methodical emotion. Mutable is a very versatile emotion. So like they range in kind of the different ways they exert this emotion, but overall they're some of the most sensitive people you'll ever meet. And that's kind of, I just like really, this is something I've been thinking about a lot. Like your sensitivity is in no way a form of weakness, water signs, you know? So like you know that like sensitivity is actually one of the biggest fucking strengths, because you can empathize and have an emotional depth to psyche that no other sign possesses. And so when you have that, like you can really put that to a form of use, and like put that in a way of either giving back or just giving love to yourself or giving love to the people around you. Like you have that form of empathy that can really change someone's life. And so that's something amazing about water signs. And also, you know what I mean? Like we talk about that all the time. It's like water signs and fire signs, like they have just so much emotion. It's, except water signs, like they feel it all. They like, you know what I mean? They feel, but fire signs like act it out. They're very demonstrative. So like emotional signs, you know what I mean? Emotional elements, because they like, they're just a lot. Like fire is a lot to deal with, and an ocean is also a lot to deal with. So it's like a lot of emotions, just like they're exerting it in different ways. But yeah, like water signs, like sensitivity is the biggest strength. Actually, it's just the full biggest strength they have is their sensitivity, and with that sensitivity they become super creative. All signs are creative, but water signs in particular, they just have so much emotion to create with.
But I think this emotion looks so different on different people. So it's like the Scorpios might be seen as like the harder shell, like gothic. Like this is like the stereotypical one. Like no, the reason why they're wearing all black and like acting like they go to a funeral every day is because they're feeling so much internally. And then you have like the Cancer, that's like the hermit. They're gonna kind of hide their feelings a little bit, but like when they do tell you, they're ready. You know what I mean? They're more of like that motherly love. It's like they're ready. It's like when they're ready, they'll tell you. They'll crawl out of their shell and they'll tell you, but like forcing things out of a Cancer can get a little ugly.
Yeah, and sometimes like again the issues like Scorpio, like they hold in their emotion. Like again, this is kind of okay, this is also just because coming to like animals, like a Scorpio has a scorpion shell, a crab has a crab shell, you know what I mean? But the Pisces fish does not have a shell at all. So like the Scorpio shell is like it's much more like just like really deep emotional. It holds it in, it like just feels it all and like holds it and holds it and holds it and like reserves it, but like knows the power that it reserves in whatever way they want to feel it. But like the Cancer is like, yo, I just have a hard shell to crack, but I'm a big softy on the inside.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Like
I'm just big.
have you ever eaten crab legs? You
Yeah,
know
I when
how
I was
hard it is. I don't even like eating them because it's so hard to get the meat out of the legs. That's
yeah,
my analogy
yeah,
because it's
there's
like
yeah.
it's there and it's so meaty and it's so good, but to get that little like to just claw it out,
Yeah.
it just takes so much time and effort and I'm just done with it by the time I'm clawing it. I'm like I'm over. I'm over trying
Yeah.
to get to know you like that.
Yeah, and also like I don't know, it's just like yeah, and like and then then you have like the Pisces that has literally no fucking, and it's Pisces has no shell, and it is also the mutable one. Like its emotion flows like with the ocean, so it changes all the time and is always changing and is always feeling. So it feels all the levels of the ocean. You know what I mean? Instead of like being a fixed one that's kind of stuck to their emotions, and like like a hermit being like in like shelled by their emotions. Like the Pisces is just exploring it all, it's feeling it all. So they're both like, I think like also a big important thing of like all a similar thing to again fire signs, because they're really emotional signs, is like it can be very like victimhood complex, you know what I mean? It's very like because they feel it all and they're like, my feelings are valid, you know what I mean? Like I
Mhm.
feel it and like my feelings are valid and I show them in different ways, but like I know they're valid. So that's like something like that. It's like the validation and their sensitivity is something they need, and there's something constantly, especially like overall the world is super against, you know what I mean, or super rough on, and it's super
Mhm.
rough on water signs because it's just like world is pretty harsh. And so when you have all that emotion, it's like I don't know, you internalize it all very, very differently. So that's like a overall view of water signs, but they're I'm a water sign. We're me and Gabby are water signs overall.
It's just so interesting how Scorpio is just seen as like not emotional or holding it in, but like with my
Yeah, no.
placements, I can't hold in my emotions.
Yeah.
But then also I also understand like what it's like because I feel such a fire Aries that like I feel like I can't be feeling all of this, like I'm trying to calm down with the water. I'm always trying to water down my Aries.
Mm.
So yeah, so that actually, yeah, you're right. With the Sun in Scorpio, my first instinct is like chill with your emotions, and like since I'm a rising Aquarius, people actually think I'm like mad chill and whatever, and like go with the flow. But ideally, I'm like trying to be methodological with everything I'm trying to do, and like not trying to go with the flow. I want to I actually want to understand what I'm doing, and I don't know. I don't know.
No,
It's
it's a
hard.
good. It's hard. It's really, really hard. Yeah, but yeah, totally, totally, totally. Yeah, but yeah. So like, this emotion will like play out depending on what other elements you have, like how other elements are working out on this stuff. Whether you're like cerebral, logical,
Yeah.
or like very
Anna
physical and
lucked out with that Aquarius moon to help her out with her Pisces sun and your Pisces
oh yeah, and
remember
like
your
yeah,
stellium
yeah,
in
yeah.
Pisces. You lucked out with Aquarius moon. That's what I'm saying. It's like
Yeah, I looked up with an Aquarius stellium. The whole thing is like I'm full on air. Like the whole Uranus like ruling planet has really taught me to be like, wait, you thought you were water this whole entire time? Like, yeah, you are, but you're much more air than you think. And so I think that was a huge revelation I got as I got older. Because like when I was like, as we call it, like underdeveloped, like it was so emotional and like had like felt like I had to always attach emotion to logic, which is hard, but yeah, it's yeah, definitely having like I so one time me and Gabby walked into a bagel store and we met this other one of Gabby's friends, and she's also really into astrology. So she was like, hey, like what are your placement, and like quickly asked me my placement as she was like making my coffee order. She was like, I was like, oh, I'm like a Pisces stellium, and I was like, I have a like Sag, Aquarius, Libra, and like my other placements. And she was like, how do you like stay grounded? She was like, how do you just like do that? And it's just like the example of like how different elements flow so differently with each other, and when they're together and there's a lot of flowing, like I struggle with that a lot. But then I take into consideration that like Aquarius is a fixed sign, you know what I mean? So it's like
mm,
methodical, it's super
mm,
methodical. So I have to hone into that. So it's like kind of a like seeing the different placements in your chart and the way you work and your elements and stuff. It's super important.
mm.
But yeah, water signs, like, love you guys. You're so fucking emotional.
You realize it's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot. Wow. I really was chosen to feel everything
Yep.
and myself. But
Yeah.
how do I compartmentalize? Like
Yeah. That's like the worst thing about being all air and like all water, mostly all water. It's like I
yeah.
feel it all and I know it all.
Who am I feeling for? Whose feelings are these? You
No,
know?
exactly. I was just like, I feel it all and I know it all, which is the worst part. So I'm like, oh fuck, I feel it and I know it all. It's just so overwhelming. And I think that's why like I run hot and cold really quickly. So it's just like there's a lot to fucking feel. It's a lot to fucking think about. So I have a lot of thinking and a lot of feeling to do. If you've come this far with us, like now you can see if you're looking at all these stuff and what this means, and you can go back to this and kind of keep it as in your notes of like introspection and harnessing the elements that you kind of have, you know? So like if you can do that, like you can compartmentalize, you can think things, you can harness things. I think that's a big thing. It's like astrology is a form of empowerment for us. You know what I mean? Because it's like, hey, you exist in the world and you exist out of this form manners, like go out and get it. You know what I mean? Get it. Be what you be, like be what you are. And again, if none of this ever relates to you, don't fucking take it into consideration. It's all discernment. But you know, understanding the elements and how they align with your everyday life gives you a better look into your personal operations, and again how you can execute, how you can express, and how you can develop all of these qualities within you. You know what I mean? We all have these forms of elements in us in some different ways, some elements more prominent than others and in different manners, but yo, like it's so important to look at that so you can harness your power, you know? So I hope all of you get some really, you know, deep introspection from this. And it's a fucking lot. But everyone's like, oh fuck, I don't want to be introspective. It's a form of philosophy, you know what I mean? Like not like as we started in the beginning, like outrospection now falls back into introspection. So it's like fully like cycling through. So that's kind of like philosophers need that. You know what I mean? The philosophers looked at the moon, they looked at astronomy, they looked at the elements, and they're like, oh shit, this relates to us in some way. You know what I mean? And like astrology is kind of again, I need to always psychology is a pseudoscience, like always. You know what I mean? That is not something that we can argue with. It's a pseudoscience, but it is kind of the closest, most developed forms of understanding the elements and understanding what we're made out of in certain senses. Like if it like this is a funny thing, like I see all the time like people being like, oh, I thought my whole life I was a Gemini rising, but I was a Scorpio rising, and like their life changes forever, you know. So like it's complicated, you know what I mean? Like positions of the earth and astronomy, how that changes over time, the changes of our axis, the changes of our hemisphere, all of that, like it changes. So it's not perfect, but if you can see whatever if it's just about noticing patterns too. It's just about like us connecting the patterns, and astrology is a really fucking fun way to do it. And I really recommend all of you go through that introspection and really try to harness your power.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so cheers from your favorite water signs or like mix of a bunch of shit, but we're all stardust.
Yeah,
We're
it's
all
hard. You don't have to figure this out yourself. That's why we go to astrology, and maybe they have a better way to explain it, and then that's when you like add it on to your own inferences and your own experiences.
It all goes back to pre-Socratics. So
They were trying to figure out the same shit.
yeah, and so like again, astrology is not just Western astrology, which is what we kind of briefly talked about. There's so many different levels of astrology. Like this is the point, is like there are so many theories out there, so many theories about like who we are. Let's explore them. Like why wouldn't you want to explore them and like and then pick and choose what it like? I feel like this is the point of life. Like, you know, as like me, like this is why we started this podcast, was we love listening to other forms of philosophy and forms of thoughts and forms of theories and making connections and parallels. And then we take all of the knowledge and we pick the parts that we really resonate with and we find our own individual truth in. And we make our own philosophy. We take them in and we're like, oh, so I'm part this, I see that, and I'm forming my own individual life philosophy to help me with either introspection, to help me with love and relationships, to help me with like dealing with death, like to help you to kind of figure out how to navigate all of these intense emotional human experiences.
Anna was saying like we're all made out of stardust and everything, like the pre-Socratics realized we're all made of all gods and everything is made out of gods.
Yeah.
We're all made of the same things and it's all magical.
Exactly. When this is also going back to the like just Christianity again. God made us in his image. We're made up in the image of gods. You know what I mean? We are our own gods. We are our own universe.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the secret.
That's the secret of the universe. Perfect.